Gotta have that smell, that essence. Yes.
But then you got the pine needles everywhere.
That's true.
Get a good tree and you don't have to worry about that.
A good tree doesn't do pine needles?
You can get those pine-scented cones.
Well, it could, I guess. You guys are pathetic.
Well, listen, so I always grew up with a fake tree. And then when we first got married, my wife was like, no, I grew up with real trees. We're good. And then I guess there's something about the California trees, and because my wife's not from here, and she was totally allergic to it. Oh. And so we did that 1 year, and now we've had a fake tree ever since.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have a fertility item, it might as well be fake.
That's true. Good point. Yeah. Is that what it was originally?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's a deep dive.
I didn't know.
Well, at least that's some speculations on it. I mean, there's all kinds of speculations on what some of the different connections to the way we celebrate Christmas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh, well.
So the gifts under the tree.
But I'm not an expert in that area.
Well, it sounded like you'd done a deep dive Reddit on.
Maybe I have. Maybe I have. Maybe you can find my entry on Reddit.
Look him up on Jay Beals. I don't know. I didn't have a fun.
It was a good try.
Yeah, it was right over.
That's all right.
The story of my life.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I see dead people.
Hasta la vista, baby.
You can't handle the truth.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Okay, so this week's movie is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim Burton, actually, it's Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Good to note is he did not direct this movie. Most people think that he did. He didn't. Henry Selick directed the film. When it came out and was released, Disney didn't quite know what to do with it. Again, obviously, it's a darker.
I still don't know what to do with it.
That's all right. There's a lot going on in this movie.
I know what to do with it, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true.
So I actually really enjoy this movie, and I think it's a fun one to dialogue about. And so if you guys just want to sit there and listen, you can't. You guys take 5. Yeah.
I do think it has a lot of great worldview discussion points.
Totally, right.
But
I get it.
It's a musical, A,
I know.
and
So
2,
checks off another
it's
box
just weird.
It is weird.
It is very weird.
No doubt, right? And I think that's too, like, my wife, that's the way she feels about this movie. It's dark, it's weird. It's classic Tim Burton, who, again, in every single one of his films is about an outsider who doesn't fit in. So, Frills, maybe we can talk a little bit about
speaking of outsider.
So, yes, did you guys go see this together too?
Outsider, loner.
Yes.
What's the kind of central message of The Nightmare Before Christmas?
So we have identity, belonging, and purpose, right? Mm-hmm. Jack Skellington, he's looking for meaning beyond his role as Pumpkin King.
Right.
You know, and in doing so, we see all the chaos that ensues as a result. So messes up Christmas for all. So but I would say those are kind of your 3 main themes are all thrust upon because of Jack's search for something greater, dissatisfaction in what he's getting from his role.
Identity is and purpose of life. There's again, who am I? Mm-hmm. What am I doing here? What happens to me when I die? Those are the 3 big questions.
Yep.
And we see those in, I won't say all movies, but most movies.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because obviously we know written on our hearts is we have an eternal purpose. Mm-hmm. Either that's going to be with Christ or eternity in hell. Mm-hmm. And so our internal purpose is fighting against all those different things. And so this movie is a metaphor for much of that.
Jack has an existential crisis.
Here's a dead skeleton who has an existential crisis.
And his journey into finding himself and his purpose and true love. And I mean, you have Hallmark movies that are like that. Only this is a musical with skeletons.
Yeah, so I never thought about that, but it is kind of Tim Burton's Hallmark movie.
Yeah, in a weird package.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Again,
musically kind of way.
But you know me, I'm a little weird, so maybe that's why I like it. Yeah.
You heard it here. Finally.
I don't know if that's really a spoiler, but
I didn't know this was confessional. Keep going.
If the audience has listened to the last year and a half of us doing this, they're like, it makes sense.
Yes.
We knew that already.
Yeah.
Move on. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about, you brought up Pumpkin King, okay? Dissatisfied in Halloween Town. stumbles across this kind of portal, this area within the woods that has portals to all the different holidays. Goes to Christmas Town, and immediately there's a whole song called "What's This?" And it's all built around
What's
him.
this?
What's this? There's something in the air. What's this? What's this?
I knew I could get him to sing it. I knew it.
You almost got me. I'm not gonna
I
lie.
know.
In the workplace all around. Okay. So yeah, Danny Elfman, by the way, Oingo Boingo. That's how I know you'll know.
Oingo Boingo. That sounds familiar. That's
The
like
band
in the 80s?
in the 80s?
Okay,
Yeah. So
you
what's
threw
just
me
happened?
off.
What?
Just happened? I thought he was going to be, yes!
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Totally.
It threw me off. I was like,
I'm sorry. I should have picked, some,
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, totally been.
Do.
Exactly. Anyways.
I can actually sing that whole song.
All right, stop.
But I won't. Collaborate and listen.
Anyways.
Wow.
Ice is back with
Gen X.
Something hold me tightly fold like a hot boat daily and nightly. Okay. Will it ever stop? Nope, it won't. Okay. So, talking about purpose. He goes to Christmas Town. It's full of life, right?
Color, vibrant.
Color. It's vibrant.
Yep.
The very things that are the exact opposite of. Now, in Halloween Town, everything is muted. It's all grays and blacks except one character, and that's that you brought up, Sally. And Sally is not even a real thing. She's been created by one of the people who live, Dr. Finkelstein, in Halloween Town. And we'll get on that because there's a whole another subtext with all his character. But he gets there, and what does Jack want to do? The very first thing that he does, because he can't understand, again, just like us in Christianity, like we can't, until the Lord reveals it to us, what Christ has done, Scripture doesn't resonate, doesn't make fully make sense. The scales have to be removed, right? So Jack, he can't figure it out. So what does he do, which I think is interesting? It turns to a naturalistic worldview, which is the very first thing that he tries to figure out with is the scientific method.
He opens the book, right? And it literally says scientific method.
And it's like right there in your face. Why? Because there must be some plausible scientific explanation.
Yeah. The irony is that there's no plausible scientific explanation of a skeleton that is alive who thinks and feels and is concerned.
And is the Pumpkin King.
Yeah.
But that doesn't even answer for it.
Yeah.
The scientific method doesn't answer it for him. And so
there's something mystical.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. There's something missing, and it's got to be something else. Let's talk a little bit about how this film, because once Jack gets there, there's a blending of two different kind of worlds. You've got Halloween Town and Christmas Town, and the blending that kind of happens within that. Like, what are any thoughts? Any things that we can think from a Christian worldview?
Like when I first saw it, I was like, wow, he is trying to make Christmas a Halloween version of Christmas.
Right.
It's not Christmas. It is taking everything that's like all the gifts are scary and everything is like designed to be Halloween only with the trappings of Christmas kind of around it. Even the reindeer, right? They're dead skeleton reindeer that drive him and all those things. And so I think what you do see, and it's really fascinating, is you have a visual of syncretism. And syncretism is just blending beliefs, cultures, concepts
which
together.
So many people do. Right?
All the time.
And unfortunately, there's many Christians who do this too.
100%.
Pick and choose.
Well, when you look at the Bible, there's many examples of that, right? So one of the first ones, Jeroboam. For all the people who are wondering, it's 1 Kings chapter 12. You have the kingdom is split. Rehoboam has the 2 tribes. Jeroboam takes the 10 tribes. And he changes the timing and sequence of certain feasts. He makes not just the Levites priests, but he makes all the people priests. And he sets up 2 calves to worship Yahweh. 2 Kings has where when the exiles happened for the northern kingdom, Assyria puts a bunch of Babylonian type people into the northern kingdom, and they bring their gods. And 2 Kings actually says that they worship their gods and they worship Yahweh. So there's always been examples, even in the New Testament. Gnosticism is a blending of Platonic thought with some Christian trappings. We have it all over, and I think that's one of the things you see in this is trying to make trying to make something new, but really what you're doing is you're warping the original.
And I'm always a little weary.
No, go.
Okay. Of sometimes you'll see churches where they'll talk about it's a church plant, and it's like this is going to be different, church differently, and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, why the need to have to? Why? Because there's something that usually they want to replace. It's usually sin. They don't want to. Like again, there's a whole, and this is a big conversation we could get into, but there's a whole series of commercials right now that are out there on God Gets Us.
Yes.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And to me, that's like when I see those, this is what I think of, because it's you're missing. It's downplaying the key component, which is what Christ did for us on the cross.
Yeah, 100%.
And so that, to me, I'm like, so I don't think that Tim Burton sat down and said, hey, listen, I want to do some kind of examination of theology and all that. No. But I do think that it's written on his heart, and he can't help himself, that he knows that there's something more. Frills, what were you saying?
But we see that even in churches, but just in life, when we try to take our own values and bring something else that we're like, hey, I kind of like that, but I need to mesh it together, you always see them end up more lost and more confused, and typically there's chaos that surrounds. And these churches that try to replace church from what it should be to what they think it should be, you always hear about the corruption that's involved later on, somewhere down the line. It always causes chaos, right? And that's what we see. And we see in walks today where people are trying to, they have something that they want to stick to. Usually it's sin they want to hold on to. And so they look for a way to justify why they're doing what they're doing. And it causes chaos.
And I think, too, a lot of times what happens is you don't realize that you're bringing your thinking into it. It's not like, not every time is a purposeful, like I'm trying to change stuff because I want it the way I want it. I think some do that. You see the LGBTQ, that's like a big issue. But I think a lot of people are impacted by their culture. They don't realize how much they're impacted by their culture, and they bring that into theology. They bring that into the way that we view God. And I think that is, and has always been, one of the greatest challenges for the church in the last 2,000 years is syncretism, in taking the culture around them, Christianizing it, but you're losing something of the true value, heart, truth, all those things when you try to repackage it to make it palatable to the contemporary mind.
And again, one of the great things that Satan does, right, is all he has to do is just confuse people just enough, and just enough is enough to keep them from accepting Christ. Right?
Yeah. Rat poison isn't 100% poison. There's just a little bit of poison in a mixture that is palatable and actually attractive, right? And so, like, anytime that you see these types of things, like He Gets Us, there's always a major component out. And the culture of tolerance and things like that are kind of presented in a way that is very Christianly, but it actually has nothing to do with Christ.
Because they would say, again, the big thing they always go to is, well, Christ, dined with the sinners.
Yeah.
He did, to call them to repentance, to draw them to Himself, not as a sign of acceptance. There's a difference. Kind of getting back to the film in regards to this, one of the things that I think is really interesting about this movie is, again, you've got all these different layers. Obviously, one of the big things that's unique about this film is, again, from a Christian worldview, we would say, okay, man has, oftentimes tried to, I'm going to do this, I can do this, I don't need God, I can replace God, right? God comes in. Again, the end of this film is Santa has to come in and save Jack and repair all the destruction of Jack. Obviously, we know that's what Christ has done for us. The difference in this film, where it deviates from a biblical, well, there's many places, but one of the main things is Jack then doesn't repent and say, Santa, great, whatever. What does he do? He goes back to, well, I am the Pumpkin King. That's what I was always meant to be. I was meant to rule the dead and this place of darkness. And obviously not for us. I mean, that's not what we're called. We're called to repent and follow Christ. This film, again, there's so many different ironies in this. When Jack comes to this realization at the end of the film, he's in the arms of an angel holding a Bible.
Yeah.
And then comes the realization that, he has screwed this up, and what his true purpose is to go back to what he was originally intended for. Then you've got the whole Dr. Finkelstein, which is really interesting. So he creates Sally, his creation, who then rebels against him.
Yep.
So what does he do? He creates another creation that looks identical to him, except it's the female version, and gives her half his brain.
Yeah.
Right? And then in a classic, like, so there's I was talking with Beals, there's this very famous painting on Narcissi, who looks into his own reflection, falls in love with his own reflection. That's it. It's a physical representation of that. The classic narcissistic love of self that you see represented in this film. It's so, again,
it's fascinating.
It is fascinating
portrayal,
right?
If they could just take the music out, it'd be great.
And the weirdness.
See, I love
and the weirdness.
I mean,
yeah. In fact,
strip away everything.
Yes.
In fact, burn it.
Yes.
Second thought. Just get rid of it.
Just get rid of it.
So yeah, again, there's so much going on with this film, and so many different. I really could talk about this film for a lot because there's a lot. But any other final thoughts?
Yeah, I think you have a redemption theme, right? And that shows up in a lot of movies.
Right.
And the problem though is that it is not a biblical redemption.
Right.
The redemption is often the existential crisis that moves someone in their own power, typically, to go from the old to the new and change metamorphosis into something better. And it's all internal. There's no external factors. There may be a guide along the way or things like that, but it's all me making the change. Right. Whereas true redemption is all about God redeeming us, that that He paid a debt He did not owe.
There's a grace gift involved.
Yeah.
It was interesting at the end where Jack was like, well, Santa, is it too late to save Christmas? And Santa's line is, it's never too late.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like the God of that world comes in and says, oh, no. It's always, don't worry, we can save this.
Yeah, and there's a famous line in an old song that He paid a debt He did not owe because we owed a debt we could not pay. And that's the central feature of redemption, that it leads to regeneration.
Right.
Yeah.
It leads to new creation. It leads to being bought back from sin to honor and glorify Him. And that is really true purpose in life. And so when you look at these themes, they're like scratching at and reaching out and grasping at things that they know to some extent are truths, but they've been blinded by the God of this world. And I think biblical understanding of redemption, like what is He redeemed to? He goes back and He's the same thing, only He's got a girlfriend.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's
That's
no
exactly right.
true redemption
That's right.
involved. And I think that's as you look at that, like there's a lot
even
of...
from a character arc standpoint, there's not the traditional... Again, typically a character arc is you start out as one thing and become something new at the end for the betterment of something.
Yep.
He starts out as one thing, only to become that same thing at the end, which, again, speaks to Tim Burton's worldview, which is, hey, the way you are, that's what you need to be.
Yeah, just accept it.
Just accept it.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Acceptance.
Because He's weird.
That's
Yes.
Just accept it.
Who likes to sing about it?
Thank you for listening to Real Profs, a production of the Center for Thinking Biblically. To support this ministry, please visit thinkbiblically.org/donate. To learn more about the Masters University on-campus and online undergraduate and graduate programs, visit masters.edu.